Because if you're right here, you don't have space.
Till 45, 50, but you still love it, enjoy it, 100% like you start that thing.
It didn't come with a press release or a handshake, no dual training announcement, no flashy gloves with both flags. What it came with was simpler and louder, a clip just 30 seconds, dropped onto social media without warning, without build-up, without promo. Just the sound of gloves slicing through air like gunfire. And Manny Pacquiao, 46 years old, moving like he never left. The video didn't ask for validation. It didn't tease a comeback. It didn't say who it was for. But the world didn't need a caption. Because when Manny moves like that, boxing listens. And suddenly, the silence surrounding the clip spoke louder than the punches themselves. Fans flooded comment sections. Analysts broke down the footage frame by frame. Former champions dropped respect emojis like confetti. But one name hovered in every conversation, Canelo Alvarez. Not because Manny mentioned him, not because he was tagged, but because as the world watched the legend redefine 46, every current champion got pulled into orbit, especially the biggest one. Canelo didn't post a reaction, didn't issue a challenge, didn't say a word. But something shifted, because in boxing, the loudest statements are often the ones never spoken.
Encouraged by Manny Pacquiao in this fourth round, under a minute left. And there Pacquiao lands the combination.
Canelo Alvarez isn't the type to overreact. His legacy is built on calculation, on patience, on silence that hits harder than most fighters' words. He stared down chaos, trash talkers, press conference brawls, internet noise, and never flinched. But this wasn't noise. This was different. The Pacquiao clip didn't demand attention. It commanded it. For a fighter like Canelo, who's mastered every version of modern boxing, from surgical pressure to punishing bodywork, what he saw wasn't nostalgia. It was relevance. Pacquiao's footwork, his tempo, the violence in every pivot. It spoke a language only champions understand. Hunger. And that's why, even in silence, the moment felt personal. Because for someone like Canelo, who trains at altitude, who lives in the gym between camps, who obsesses over every detail, watching a 46-year-old legend train like the fire never left doesn't hit like admiration. It hits like a gut check. The kind that makes even the most disciplined ask themselves, am I still that locked in? Whether Canelo said it out loud or not didn't matter. The sport was already whispering on his behalf, drawing comparisons, reading between the lines, wondering if the silence wasn't just respect, but something closer to awe.
Insane 10-punch combo.
Stay up, goes to the flurry again. Stay up. Goes to the flurry again.
In a sport that feeds on bravado, where every jab is followed by a quote and every punch is turned into a promo, Canelo's silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. This wasn't hype. There was no fight to sell, no grudge to fuel, just raw output from a man who, by every logical measure, should have slowed down, and yet he hadn't. Pacquiao's movement wasn't sharp for his age. It was sharp, period. His speed didn't look like a memory. It looked like a warning. For active fighters still trying to stake their claim, it was a reminder. Some legends don't retire. They become the atmosphere. And suddenly Canelo, the standard, found himself being measured against something intangible. Not a resume, a rhythm, a spirit. There's something haunting about that kind of silence. Because when a reigning king like Canelo doesn't respond to a moment that electrifies the entire sport, it doesn't feel like indifference. It feels like calculation, as if he's watching, rewatching, not out of fear, but recognition. that what Pacquiao displayed wasn't showmanship. It was truth. That kind of rhythm, at that age, doesn't come from routine. It comes from obsession. For Canelo, a fighter who's ruled with poise and control, watching someone throw with that much fury, that much looseness, might have stirred something deeper than rivalry. It stirred memory of a time when boxing was still pure. When fighters didn't train for cameras, they trained because they could not train. So maybe Canelo didn't speak because there was nothing left to add. Maybe his response was the discipline he showed the next morning. A kind of unspoken respect. The kind only two real warriors can share. Because Pacquiao didn't post that video to call anyone out. He didn't need to. The clip was a challenge. Not to Canelo. To everyone. And that's the part fans couldn't stop talking about. It wasn't what Canelo said. It was what he didn't. The man who usually controls the narrative, who dominates headlines just by hinting at a name, suddenly found himself on the edge of someone else's moment. Not because he'd slipped, not because he'd lost, but because someone from another era reminded the world what raw hunger looks like. The kind that doesn't care about contracts or cameras. Just a gym, a trainer, and a fire that refuses to die. When that kind of energy hits the timeline, it doesn't just trend, it echoes. And no matter how dominant Canelo has been, when Manny Pacquiao trains like that, every other champion, even the face of boxing, stands in shadow for a second. The whispers became debates. Could Canelo move like that at 46? Would he even want to? Maybe that's why he didn't respond. Not out of pride, but reflection. Because when a man with nothing to prove still pushes like he has everything to lose, it makes everyone question why they're still lacing up. This wasn't about beef. It was about proof. Proof that someone at the top still cares that much. And sometimes, when greatness walks into the room, you don't interrupt. You just watch and let it speak. In a way, that's what made it all more powerful. There was no official link between the two, no confirmed training session, no sparring, not even a gym selfie. Just silence, speculation, and imagination. The timeline was filled with fans piecing it together because moments like this don't ask for context. They create it. Pacquiao didn't need to train with Canelo. He just needed to remind the world what real training looks like. And in doing so, he accidentally made the sport look inward. This wasn't about resumes. It was about rhythm, movement, and hunger. When a 46-year-old man shakes the boxing world with a 30-second clip, it's not nostalgia. It's a gut check. And Canelo, whether he liked it or not, was now part of that conversation. In a sport where clout often outweighs craft, Pacquiao brought it all back to the basics. Sweat, speed, fire. He didn't call out anyone. But without saying a word, he called everyone out. That's why fans weren't waiting for Canelo's press release. They were studying his silence, hunting for the moment behind closed doors when even the proudest champion had to stop and say, maybe just himself, damn.
I'm gonna let him loose in another round.
Round 10?
Round 10 or 11.
Boxing doesn't need hype when the work speaks. And that's exactly what happened here. Pacquiao didn't look like a retired legend brushing off dust. He looked like a problem someone wasn't ready to solve. Like time was still chasing him, and he was still outrunning it. That hit something primal, not just in fans, but in fighters. Canelo has spent his career as the gold standard, the blueprint everyone tries to follow. But suddenly, someone older, smaller, and supposedly finished reminded the world what that standard used to look like, when it was built in silence, in sweat-soaked gyms, not under spotlights. That's not easy to ignore, even for a champion. Maybe Canelo's silence wasn't avoidance. Maybe it was respect. Or maybe it was a reset. Because when you see someone working like that, not for attention, not to prove anything, but just because it's who they are, it makes you question what really matters. Not belts, not fame, but the fire. That's what Manny showed. And without tagging him, without training with him, he made the whole world. including Canelo, look inward. The beauty of it all? No words were needed. No face-offs, no fake tension, just truth. A moment that cut through the noise and struck at the core of boxing. Pacquiao didn't announce a comeback. He didn't tease a return. All he gave was 30 seconds of raw, relentless rhythm. And that was enough. Enough to remind everyone that greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just shows up, puts the gloves on, and moves like it never left. And when that happens, everyone feels it, not as a threat, but as a reminder of what the craft demands. Canelo has always carried himself like a true professional. But even the most disciplined fighter gets tested when a storm like Pacquiao rolls in, not with noise, but with movement. That's what hit hardest. Whether Canelo ever responds or not, one thing's clear. The bar didn't rise. It snapped back to where it used to live. In the grind, in the shadows, in the shuffle, and even the sport's brightest star had to stop and listen. Legacy isn't just built in title fights. It's built in the quiet. When the camera is stopped, but the work doesn't. That's what Pacquiao showed. No entourage, no spectacle, just purity. And that's the part Canelo couldn't outshine. Not with belts, not with PPVs, not even with pound-for-pound rankings. When that clip dropped, it didn't just shake the timeline. It shook the soul of the sport. Because it wasn't about performance. It was about obsession. Not for fame, for the craft. Whether Canelo saw it as a tribute, a challenge, or something else, one thing was clear. He felt it. You don't become the face of boxing without recognizing when something real shows up. Manny's clip wasn't just a gust of wind. It was thunder. And in that moment, Canelo wasn't the center. He was a reflection. People didn't ask what the clip meant for Manny's future. They asked what it meant for Canelo's present. That's not marketing. That's gravity. And Pacquiao, knowingly or not, reminded the world his orbit still pulls the biggest names in.